Hi guys. So in this video we are going to talk about the civil society. Now in the syllabus this lesson comes as a part of political institutions. So thus far as political institutions we have discussed about state and government, political parties, pressure groups, and then we have civil society. Now when you all are studying, you all may feel like that after studying, unlike political parties, pressure groups, state and government, um, it is kind of difficult to have a proper idea, a precise idea as in what exactly is civil society. Now if you feel that way, it is not your fault, not that you haven't studied properly or anything. That is simply the nature of civil society. It is not a precise concept. It is kind of a vague concept in political science. So unlike political parties, pressure groups, state and government, where the facts are quite straightforward and where you can see a proper structure, when it comes to civil society it tends to be a little vague. So you all might feel like that you all don't have like the firmest grip. So don't let that bother you, because that's just how it is. You can have an idea about the civil society that you all may feel like it's not precise and exact like your idea about political parties and pressure groups. That's just how it is. So let's take a look at the idea of civil society. Now civil society can be defined in various ways, so much so that we study about 6 different interpretations given regarding the civil society. If we define what civil society is in a general manner, it basically means that the space between the personal sphere and the state, also the space where citizens are allowed to be politically active without the authority of the state. So each human has a personal circle, which is the family, and then there's the state where the citizen has to play a role as that is called the public sphere. So the space in between the personal sphere and the public sphere is the civil society, which is a space for those citizens to be politically be active without the authority of the state. So it is excluded from the state, and it is a free space for the citizens. Now the term civil society first came into political science. Now the civil society is an idea that has been existing for a long time in political science, but it became a mainstream word through the social contract theory. Now there are many social contract theories in the world. Even in political science, in our syllabus we study about John Locke, Thomas Hobbes and Rousseau, and out of those people, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke are the most important ones. Now if I recall the social contract theory, I will do a separate video about social contract theory anyway. Just to give you all give social contract theory in a nutshell to you all. It's basically the idea that the society was a bad place before the state, and then humans got together in their society and they went into a contract which is known as a social contract, and that created the state. And following the creation of the state, the society became a better place. Now we have 2 social contract theories. One is Thomas Hobbes, another one is John Locke. Now we studied under social contract theory that these 2 sort of disagree on the idea about who actually signed the social contract theory, whether it's people with people or people with the ruler. and what sort of a power the ruler gets. Hobbes says that he gets unlimited power, Locke says that he gets limited power. And however, that we don't care about that disagreement when it comes to civil society. Point is, Locke and Locke and Hobbes both provided the idea that the society was a bad place before the social contract theory and the creation of the state, and then the society became a better place. So the two words Hobbes and Locke both used to refer to the society before the state and after the state, the first one was the natural society. Before the state it was the natural society, and after the state it was the civil society. That's because before the creation of the state, humans were in their natural habitat, natural behavior, which is not that good. So that's why you call it the natural society. And after the creation of the state, since there was a rule to keep humans disciplined, humans started being in their civil habitat, civilized, civil habitat. So hence, people who acted civilized, people who were in their civil habitat, that society is known as the civil society. So this is how this word sort of got recognition in political science. So when it comes to civil society, there are 6 interpretations that we need to have some idea on. First, we have the classic liberal interpretation. Then secondly, we have the original Marxist interpretation. Then we have the Gramscian neo-Marxist interpretation. Then we have the associational democratic interpretation by Alexis de Tocqueville. Then we have the interpretation of civil society as a democratic movement, and we have the interpretation of civil society as a platform for social and political movements. Right. So let's take one by one and break them down. First of all, the classic liberal interpretation. So you guys know what classic liberalism basically means. Classic liberalism basically means that the state should stay away from pretty much everything. They should stay away from getting involved in people's lives, and the state should only protect law and order, nothing else. So when it comes to civil society also, now that civil society is identified as a space in between the personal space and the public space of citizens. Now, not surprisingly, the classic liberal interpretation suggests that the state should not get involved in the civil society. That the classic liberal theory suggests that the citizen should be given the full freedom within the civil society, and the state should not get involved inside the civil society, and the state should allow citizens to be full free in the civil society. Now this is what the typical classic liberalists such as like John Locke and Adam Smith, this is what these guys say. Other than this, there was a special classic liberalist who was named Hegel. Now, unlike other classic liberalists who were basically attacking Marxism and all that, Hegel sort of tried to address the points Marx raised also. So, as a classic liberalist, Hegel doesn't exactly agree with the idea that the state should stay away from everything. Hegel points out the fact that the capitalistic market you get under liberalism sort of makes citizens to be selfish. Hegel points out the fact that inside a family, that people help each other to solve their problems with love and affection and care. Now Hegel identifies that love and affection and care is lacking in the capitalistic market due to the intense competition and people being self-centered. So Hegel believes that the state should help the citizens to solve their problems, because the citizens are sort of in need of that help, because no one helps each other, because love and affection is lacking. So other than Hegel, all the other classic liberal thinkers are simply saying that the state should not get involved in the civil society. Then you have the original Marxist interpretation. Now how does Karl Marx see what the civil society is? So Karl Marx says that it is a rich man's trick. The idea of civil society is a fake, and it is a rich man's trick, and the capitalism is behind all of this. So according to the original Marxist interpretation, Marx says that the idea of civil society is pretty much a fake, a delusion. He says something called civil society doesn't really exist. He says there's no such thing called civil society. It's the capitalistic market. They say the rich people use this term civil society to disguise. They use this fancy term civil society to disguise the real nature of the capitalistic market. So the Marx and the original Marxists say that no such thing is there called civil society. It is simply another name to disguise the capitalistic market itself. So the idea suggested by Hegel that the state should get involved and state should support the citizens in the civil society to help each other because there's no love and affection. Original Marxists completely deny that, and they say the state should not be getting involved and helping people to solve their problems. The only way to solve the problem is going for a poor class revolution and taking that instrument of state to their hand and creating a classless, absolutely equal communist society. So that's the idea of civil society according to original Marxism. Then there was Antonio Gramsci, who was a neo-Marxist who took Marxist theory a little more forward. So Gramsci identifies that the civil society is consisted of so many civil society organizations. So Gramsci points out that originally Karl Marx said that if the poor people want to create an absolutely equal system and a proper communist system, that they should be taking over the instrument of state. But Gramsci identifies that not only the state, that these civil society organizations, all the organizations you see in the civil society, those organizations are also dominated by this rich class. So when you have these feminist movements, rights movements, LGBT movements, environmental movements, sports unions, religious organizations, whatever the organizations you see in the civil society, those organizations are dominated by the rich class as well, according to Gramsci. So Gramsci says if the poor people really need to take over the state and create an absolutely equal communist classless society, taking over the instrument of state is not enough, that you need to take control of these civil society organizations as well. So that's Gramsci's neo-Marxist interpretation. Then you have the associational democratic interpretation by Alexis de Tocqueville. Now Alexis de Tocqueville is an influential, important political scientist who came up with the idea of associational democracy, and it is directly connected to the concept of civil society as well. Now here's how it is explained. The idea of democracy in the modern day context is the will of the majority being followed. That's what happened in elections and all. You just check what is the majority view. That's what democracy is. In elections also what happens is we check what the majority wants. Whatever the party that has the majority votes get the government. So Tocqueville identifies that democracy has a flaw, which is going along with the opinion of the majority, which sort of leaves the minority vulnerable. So Tocqueville says the democracy has a flaw that they entertain the majority all the time, which can leave the minorities' desires and minorities' opinions not addressed. So Tocqueville points out that the civil society is a platform for that minority in a democratic system. So when the elections give way to the will of the majority, the will of the minority can use the civil society as a platform to be represented, which means the civil society is sort of an umbrella that protects the minorities in a democratic system which goes ahead with the will of the majority. So that's a kind of a straightforward one. Then the fifth one, you have civil society, civil society's interpretation as a democratic movement. This one is like this. Now we studied on the post-colonial state that most of the post-colonies were introduced democratic features. They inherited democratic features from their colonizers. But we studied that most of the colonies, except for a very few like Sri Lanka and India, they have failed to keep the democratic stream constantly. This has been a problem. That's a common problem in post-colonies, that the democracy is not mostly protected, because most of the post-colonies have gone towards dictatorships and autocratic governments. Now because of that, most of the political parties that are created in these post-colonial countries have been corrupted or have been dominated by autocracies, or in some countries they don't have political parties at all. Now you guys know that political parties are like the blood of democracy. Democracy, to be function properly, you need political parties. So when the political parties you have are heavily corrupted, or when the political parties you have are dominated by dictators, or when you don't have political parties at all, someone had to step in and protect the democracy, which was done by the civil society. So there are so many post-colonial countries where the civil society and the civil society organizations, movements came forward to protect the democracy, because that duty was not properly fulfilled by the political parties they had, or they had no political parties at all. So that is another interpretation that you can use for civil society, because civil society can be basically a democratic movement to protect democracy in countries where political parties fail to fulfill that duty. And of course you have the last one, civil society as a platform for social and political movements. Now this is a very recent development. You guys know in political science we have so many movements. We have LGBT movements, feminist movements, environment movements. So these modern day movements use the civil society as a platform to gain mainstream recognition. Now especially with the internet and social media, we can see that things like Black Lives Matter and all these notable social movements getting so much recognition and attention, and these movements have been quite influential, so much so that they have actually been making some political changes in political systems. And these social movements have been so prominent mostly due to the fact that they have the civil society, which is an ideal platform to promote their movements. So that's about the civil society.